the medical and psychological research reveals, a 600-page book assembled by activist organization Mass Resistance had been allowed to be sold on the platform for approximately 3.5 years with no issue until recently, when the online retailer notified the group that it would no longer be allowed to be sold or printed on its site. The company also reportedly blocked Mass Resistance from accessing its account's records. The book compiles data taken from major medical professional groups, the Center of Disease Control, and other sources, including LGBT medical and advocacy organizations, and makes the case the normalization of specific sexual activities has come at a great cost to society, and the acts are proven to be harmful to the human body and physique. On July 17th, we were notified that they have determined that the book violates their content guidelines, and they have thus taken it down completely. They close our account and will no longer allow us to open another account, Mass Resistance explained in a Saturday blog post. As recently happened with the Mass Resistance compilation book, when the Robinson asked Amazon why his book was taken down, a company representative informed him it was in violation of our content guidelines, but did not specifically explain what warranted the removal. Over a dozen prominent evangelical charities and organizations are calling on Ivanka Trump to pressure the administration to stop using the pandemic to suspend legal safeguards for unaccompanied migrants, children, and allowing them to be housed in hotels and deported. In a letter sent to the president's daughter and presidential advisor Monday, the leaders of 16 evangelical networks, institutions, and organizations urged the 38-year-old to do everything within your influence to ensure that the Trump administration once again enforces provisions of the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act related to unaccompanied children. The bipartisan 2008 law governs how migrant children who are not accompanied by a parent or legal guardian when apprehended at the U.S. border are treated by federal agencies. In their letter, the evangelical leaders point out the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act was passed by Congress after extensive advocacy by many evangelical organizations, including some of those that we lead. The HHS manages a network of care providers, including many faith-based non-profit organizations that provide temporary care for the children until a family member or other sponsor can be identified, screened, and approved. The evangelical leaders argue that COVID-19 should not be used as a pretext for abandoning our national commitment to standing for vulnerable children and against the scourge of human trafficking. Our faith compels us to speak up for these children, they stated. Land of Opportunity was Tuesday night's theme as speakers touted President Donald Trump's criminal justice reform, strong economy, and religious freedom. The convention kicked off with a focus on faith. To all houses of worship and to all people of faith, stripped of religious freedom and religious liberties, my Father will fight for you, said Eric Trump. We believe that each person is made by God for a purpose, President Trump said. Trump hosted a naturalization ceremony for 5 people to highlight legal immigration. You followed the rules, you obeyed the rules, you learned your history and embraced our values and proved yourselves to be men and women of the highest integrity, President Trump said. It's not so easy. You went through a lot, and we appreciate you being here today. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, broke tradition with a personal convention appearance from Jerusalem, In addition to expressing compassion for COVID-19 victims and calling for greater attention to opioid addiction, she spoke on radical division and spike in violence nationwide. I also ask people to stop the violence and looting being done in the name of justice and never make assumptions on the color of a person's skin, Melania said. Looking ahead, Vice President Mike Pence will highlight Night 3 of the RNC convention. As outrage and protests continue to shake Kenosha, Wisconsin, after the police shooting of yet another young black man, the mother and the pastor of Jacob Blake are calling America to pray. Before the Blake family began their press conference Tuesday afternoon, attorney Ben Crump introduced Pastor James Ward Jr., the pastor of Blake's family for more than 30 years, to lead the group of assembled family members, attorneys, and media representatives in prayer. Ward explained that Blake's mother requested, and at attorney Crump's request, he wanted to set the tone of the press conference by briefly representing their faith in the name of our Lord and Jesus Christ and offer a brief word of prayer. As I pray for my son, healing physically, emotionally, and spiritually, I have also been praying for the healing of our country. God has placed each and every one of us in this country because He wanted us to be here. Clearly, you can see right now, I have beautiful brown skin, but take a look at your hand, and whatever shade it is beautiful as well, Jackson added. 3 people were shot early Wednesday, including 2 fatalities in Kenosha, Wisconsin, during a night of protest over the police shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man who was shot 7 times this week by a white police officer as his children looked on. The New York Times reports that shots rang out just before midnight near a gas station in Kenosha. 3 people were struck. 1 person died after being shot in the head and another died after being shot in the chest. The 3rd victim did not sustain life-threatening injuries. Police said the investigation is focused on determining if the shooting resulted from confrontation between demonstrators and armed men protecting local businesses. The incident came on the 3rd night of protests against Blake's shooting. Some of the demonstration devolved into violent unrest. Police fired tear gas to disperse protesters who had gathered outside of the Kenosha's courthouse on Tuesday night. Some threw water bottles and fireworks at officers. Police used armored vehicles and officers with shields to disperse a crowd of protesters who ignored warnings to leave a local park. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers declared a state of emergency on Tuesday. We cannot allow the cycle of systematic racism and injustice to continue, said Evers. We also cannot continue going down this path of damage and destruction. Israeli warplanes struck Hezbollah targets near the border early Wednesday after shots were fired from Lebanon at Israeli Defense Force (IDF) troop late Tuesday. The military called the shooting a severe event at Kibbutz Menara near the city of Kiryat Shemona in the Upper Galilee. No injuries were reported. In response to the gunfire, IDF attacked helicopters and aircraft struck terror targets belonging to the Hezbollah terror group, the IDF said. These targets included Hezbollah observation posts near the Lebanese border. There were no immediate reports of casualties in Lebanon. Meanwhile, Israel continues to face threats along its southern border with Gaza. The military attacked Hamas targets in Gaza early Wednesday after terrorists sent dozens of incendiary balloons into Israel Tuesday, sparking fires. The IDF said its warplanes targeted Hamas and underground infrastructure in the coastal enclave. Israel's Fire and Rescue Service said most of the fires were small and posed no threat to people. Israel and Egypt have maintained a blockade on Gaza since Hamas took control in 2007. The blockade was implemented to prevent the import of weapons into Gaza. Israel frequently tightens the blockade in response to attacks. Last week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Hamas against escalating the violence and said Israel is prepared to fight. A county in Wyoming is experiencing 2 outbreaks of COVID-19 that had been tied to 2 local congregations, according to government officials. Fremont County spokesman Michael Jonas told the Casper Star-Tribune on Monday about the 2 outbreaks, one of which reportedly happened at a church camp. The first outbreak was responsible for as many as 30 coronavirus cases and has died down now, while the second outbreak remains ongoing. Jones did not name the churches. Jones told the Star-Tribune that it was part of an overall rise in cases in Fremont County, with the government official blaming social gatherings for the increase. We're definitely hitting some spikes, and it's all these social gatherings, he explained. You hate to say churches, but it is family and social gatherings where people are inside and let their guards down. Wyoming Department of Health spokeswoman Kim Detty labeled the outbreaks significant and explained that social distancing guidelines were not being followed at one of the churches. What can I say? It is, I know that there is an ongoing outbreak connected to at least one church in Lander that had a series of services, said Detty to the Star-Tribune. It is our understanding and recommendations we've made about face coverings and physical distancing were not followed at the event. Churches are exempt from the public health orders, but recommendations still apply. Fremont County has had 506 confirmed COVID-19 cases since March, while Wyoming as a whole has had 3,068 confirmed cases since Monday, according to the Associated Press. In response to the coronavirus pandemic, the vast majority of churches in the United States opted to end in-person worship earlier this year, switching over to exclusively online services. As a large social gathering, churches holding indoor worship and not strictly following social distancing guidelines, as seen by many as a special risk for spreading COVID-19. Westmore Church of God in Cleveland, Tennessee, experienced an outbreak of coronavirus cases after returning to indoor worship in June. Westmore pastor Kelvin Page posted a video message to Facebook in July apologizing for the outbreak, saying that he should have taken the issue of face masks more seriously. Family members of a teenager in Bosnia will face abuse charges after they were accused of beating the child and shaving her head while she admitted to having a relationship with a Christian man. Prosecutors are charging the parents, uncle and aunt of the teenage girl after they were accused of assaulting her last Monday in their apartment in the eastern city of Bisacon, according to Agence France Presse. The act was condemned on Twitter by French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin, who wrote on Twitter that he was deeply shocked by the act of torture and claimed the child was beaten and shaved because she loved a Christian. This barbarism calls for the most severe sanctions, Darmanin wrote, according to an English translation of the tweet. As first reported by the French newspaper Le Républicain, the 17-year-old girl had fallen in love with a 20-year-old man of Serbian origin. While she is of Muslim faith, he is a Christian. The two families knew of each other, and their relationship was not a problem, Deputy Prosecutor Margaret Parietti told AFP, but when they started talking about marriage, the girl's parents told her, "We are Muslims, you cannot marry a Christian." The family arrived in France over 2 years ago from Bosnia and Herzegovina. The parents initially took away the daughter's phone and stopped her from speaking with her boyfriend. This led the young couple to flee for 4 days before returning to the apartment where the girl lived with her family. The first blow came from the mother. Then there was an outbreak of violence. She was taken to a room and beaten, Pariyati explained. She was shaved, according to her testimony, by her uncle, her father's brother, while being beaten. The parents of the young man were also said to be at the apartment at the time of the beating but dared not intervene. Pariyati said the man left to report what had happened to the police. After police arrived, the girl was taken to the hospital, according to Les Republicains. The child reportedly suffered a broken rib and bruises all over her body. She also lost her hair. In France, head shavings were used to shame women accused of having relationship with Nazis, occupiers of the World War II. Pariyati said the girl's parents and her aunt and uncle were detained and will be tried for violating a law banning violence against minors. All four were released under judicial control. However, they are banned from contacting the girl, who is now under protection. Marlene Schiappa, minister delegate in charge of citizenship, also condemned the act. Presbyterian Church USA announced Monday that it might have to limit or even end its tradition of holding a biennial General Assembly as mass gathering due to a financial woes and declining membership. The Reverend J. Herbert Nelson II, stated clerk of the PCUSA General Assembly, said future General Assemblies will not likely resemble past ones in terms of scale. In a video posted on the PCUSA's website Monday, Nelson said the denomination cannot continue to hold what he called the Big Tent General Assembly, in which we have people from all over coming in and spending 6, 7, 8 days at a General Assembly and utilizing that in a big arena. Nelson attributed the reduction in future General Assemblies events to financial woes tied to the mainline. Protestant denominations' considerable membership declined over the past several years. That is happening basically because we are at a place financially with the drying up of our capita, as it is the whole system is strained with regards to the fallout in the denomination with membership loss, which actually came from people leaving, Nelson said. Dealing with the issue that we are not a denomination right now that can afford the kinds of things that we have been doing. Nelson clarified that this does not necessarily mean we stop doing anything, but added that we have to find new ways of adjusting to the current situation for PCUSA. Hurricane Laura is barreling towards the United States even stronger than previously expected. Forecasters say it's reached Category 3 status and it is churning over the Gulf of Mexico, which it is now expected to strike at a catastrophic Category 4 hurricane aimed squarely at the Texas and Louisiana coastline. Early Wednesday's satellite images showed that Laura has rapidly intensified. There are no signs it will stop soon, said the National Hurricane Center. Some areas, when they wake up Thursday morning, they're not going to believe what happened, said senior hurricane specialist Stacy Stewart. Maximum sustained winds from Laura have already reached 110 miles per hour, and forecasters expect a storm surge that could top 15 feet and winds to top 130 miles per hour before landfall. Laura will push water onto more than 450 miles of coastline from Texas to Mississippi. Authorities have issued hurricane warnings from San Luis Pass, Texas to intracoastal Louisiana, and storm surge warnings from Port Arthur, Texas to the mouth of the Mississippi River. The Weather Service is warning people to expect catastrophic damage. Power outages will last for weeks to possibly months. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks or months, it said. Authorities have ordered more than 500,000 of people to flee, including residents of the Texas cities Beaumont, Galveston, and Port Arthur, and low-lying parishes in southwestern Louisiana. The United Nations Security Council on Tuesday dismissed a request from the United States to reimpose virtually all international sanctions on Iran, citing a lack of consensus among member states. Indonesia's ambassador to the UN, Dian Triansyah, whose country currently holds the rotating council presidency, announced the decision following requests from Russia and China to reveal the results of his polling of all 15 council members. Having contacted the members and received letters from many member countries, it is clear to me that there is one member which has a particular position on the issues, while there are a significant number of members who have contesting views, he said. In my view, there is no consensus in the council, Jani said. Thus, the president is not in the position to take further action. Last week, the United States Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, formally requested the International Committee reinstate so-called snapback sanctions on Iran that were lifted as part of the 2015 Iranian nuclear deal. He argued that the snapback sanctions are necessary because Iran has repeatedly violated the deal. However, Tehran says that this is a result of the United States violating the agreement by withdrawing from it and then reimposing harsh unilateral sanctions. All of the council members except the Dominican Republic informed the council president that Trump administration's demand was illegal because Trump had already pulled the United States out of the nuclear deal in 2018 and is no longer a participant in the accord. The United States mission to the United Nations insisted in a statement Tuesday that the U.S. is on firm legal ground to initiate the restoration of the sanctions. United States Ambassador Kelly Craft on Tuesday accused the UN of lacking courage and morality clarity. The Ark Encounter in Williamstown, Kentucky has opened a new high-tech 3 million virtual reality experience known as Truth Traveler. The first VR show is titled A Flood of Reality, where guests travel back to the time of Noah and the Ark. Wearing state-of-the-art VR headsets with studio-quality headphones, visitors sit in special effects motion seats that move, vibrate, and interact with them for an enhanced experience. Guest time: travel back 4,500 years to see Noah and his crew building the ark, watching the animals enter the massive ship, experiencing the flood's dramatic beginning, ride in the ark as it floats on the water, and also see the ship perched at rest on the Mount of Ararat. I'm excited about the fantastic high-tech VR edition, as people have come to expect the Ark Encounter. The bar of excellence is set extremely high, as it is again with the experience, said Ken Ham, CEO and founder of Answers in Genesis, the organization behind the Ark Encounter. Ham, who appears as a hologram at the beginning and at the end of the program, added this 4,000 VR experience is like no other. While its quality of production and immersed feel are what you would expect from Walt Disney World or Universal Studios, the message is different. A Flood of Reality presents Noah's Ark and the flood as a factual, historic, and reinforces the truth of the Bible. As CBN News has reported, more than 1 million people a year have flocked to Northern Kentucky's Ark Encounter in Williamstown since it opened in 2016. Constructed according to the dimensions given in the Bible, the Ark contained 3 decks of exhibits. One of Virginia's top health officials says he intends on making the COVID-19 vaccine mandatory once it's available. State Health Commissioner Dr. Norman Oliver told WRIC News that he supports a vaccine, especially one that could potentially save numerous lives. It is killing people now. We don't have a treatment for it, and if we develop a vaccine that can prevent it from spreading in the community, we will save hundreds and hundreds of lives, Oliver said. But some people are worried about whether or not a vaccine which has been fast-tracked is actually safe. We would not launch a campaign around mass vaccination with anything that hasn't been proven to be safe, Oliver said. Currently, the state permits people with a medical waiver to refuse a mandate, but the Virginia General Assembly is reviewing House Bill 5016, which was introduced by Mark Cole this month. The bill would grant an exemption to the vaccine mandates based on religious grounds. Debate has come up over whether any state has the authority to order its residents to get vaccinated. Dove Fox, a law professor and director of the Center for Health Law, Policy and Bioethics at the University of San Diego, states can enforce a vaccine and penalize people who don't comply with the mandate. States can compel vaccinations in more or less intrusive ways, Fox told KGTV. They can limit access to schools or services or jobs if people don't get vaccinated. They could force them to pay a fine or even lock them up in jail. Courts have found that when medical necessity requires it, the public health outweighs the individual rights and liberties at stake, Fox added. States that consider a vaccine requirement must ensure that access to the immunization is easily obtainable. No further state health officials have publicly declared that they plan on mandating the coronavirus vaccine. Here is a recap of the news today. Amazon bans outlining health hazards of homosexuality. Land of Opportunity Republicans vow to uphold faith, freedom, and justice in the second night of the Republican National. Muslim teen beaten, head shaved by family in France because she loved a Christian. Today's news were reported by CBN News, The Christian Post, and Christian Headlines. My name is Russell Sarup, and this is Kingdom News. Until next time, do have a blessed evening.
Be